Hi, we're sisters Amy and Nancy Harrington, the founders of the Passionistas Project, and we're thrilled to welcome you to tonight's Passionistas Persist Awards ceremony. We started the Passionistas Project to tell the stories of women who are following their passions and fighting for equality for all. The more we spoke with women for our podcast, subscription box, and the Power of Passionistas Summit, the more we saw a common trait in all of them. They are unstoppable. Whether they choose to use their voices to start a women-owned brand or fight for the rights of the marginalized, we found that all Passionistas are resilient, compassionate, and persistent.
So each year, we honor women who embody these qualities by presenting the Passionistas Persist Awards. Tonight's recipients personify the values of all Passionistas. They are creating communities, building businesses, founding 501c3s, and changing the world as activists. They're following their passions and fighting for equality for everyone to inspire other people to do the same. Each award presentation tonight will include an interview with the recipient. We hope you find them as inspiring as we do. We'd like to start with our first award of the evening, the Nova Award. In astronomy, a nova is a star that suddenly becomes increasingly bright. And so the Nova Award honors a businesswoman who we feel is a shining star in her field and in her community.
We first met Kim Roxie, founder of Lamique Beauty, when she participated in a panel at the Power of Passionistas Summit in 2020. We were instantly drawn to her company's mission to create a clean cosmetics line for women of color, women who historically have been marketed more toxic makeup options than their counterparts. Since the launch of Lamique 2.0 in 2020, Kim has turned her own struggle with hair loss into one of the most impactful beauty lines on the market. And she continues to break new ground with Lamique, including becoming the first Black-owned clean makeup brand to launch on Ulta.com.
Most importantly, Kim has built a company that embraces two core cultures: to be kind to people and to be kind to the planet. Lamique supports and celebrates women in all of their glory. Kim is building an inclusive community for women across the country and is passionate about serving that community. And she's creating the highest quality products with the purest ingredients to promote the health of her customers and her community, all while being dedicated to promoting environmental stewardship.
Kim has been named one of the Houston Business Journal's 40 Under 40, one of the American Business Journal's most influential young executives, and one of the 30 Black Stars by Face to Face Africa. The city of Houston formally named June 23rd as Kim Roxie Day in her honor. And she received the Barack Obama Lifetime Achievement Award for community service. She is, without a doubt, a superstar, which is why it is our distinct honor to present the 2022 Passionistas Persist Nova Award to Kim Roxie.
Wow, am I floored right now? Am I grateful? The words that come to my mind are, people don't have to show you appreciation. They can go along like it never happened. And, I appreciate the Passionistas because they have put their passion into action. And for that, I am so grateful. Being on this journey of creating an inclusive, a very kind makeup line in a world of beauty that sometimes seems intimidating, took a lot of passion, and it took a lot of grit, and it took a lot of belief. And so I thank you all for endowing me with this award and seeing the work that we're doing at Lamique as one to be honored. And I honor you for that. I honor you for seeing me. I honor you for seeing Lamique and what we're doing. So we're going to continue to make makeup that is speaking to all skin tones, that's showing up for all skin tones. But more than that, we're going to continue to be there for women in ways that others have forgotten about us. Thank you.
What are you most passionate about?
At this point, to be honest, what I'm most passionate about is almost like a variable that's changing. Right now, what I'm most passionate about is enjoying every moment and encouraging others to do the same. Like, that's what I'm really passionate about right now, is soaking in every single moment and giving others the freedom and reminding them that they have the freedom to do the same. And so in beauty, I'm always in a woman's ear, right? I'm always there for her. And right now, that's my most pertinent, passionate message, is to enjoy every moment right now.
What inspired you to create Lamique Beauty?
I have the inspiration from my mother, who believed in me when I was 21, who helped me financially, put her $500 to help me open up my own makeup shop when I was graduating from college. But she later developed metastatic breast cancer and passed away the year before my daughter was born. And now my daughter is named in honor of my mother, Loretta. But I have the passion of my mother inside of me. That's part of my inspiration. She wore makeup every single day, and she trusted that the makeup she was using was okay. But come to find out, as we did our research, it wasn't. And so I have that inside of me that's inspired me to create this line. And then I also have the desire for all women to see themselves in beauty. And so I remember going to the makeup counter when I was in high school, senior, and for prom, and getting my makeup done and looking like a ghost when I left, because my face was so ashy and so gray and so like a cast on my face. And I was thinking to myself, this doesn't make me feel beautiful. This doesn't make me feel good. And thinking, we need makeup that makes people feel good. All skin tones needs to be accepted and appreciated. And so those are the things, right? And when I created my first product for Lamique, it was inspired by my personal diagnosis with alopecia, a form of alopecia that I have that causes hair loss. And my first product was inspired by that, our Revelation Brow Duo, to fill in my own eyebrows so they could frame my face, because 75% of the framing of your face comes from your brows.
Why was it important to you to build not just a company, but a community of women?
Because I wanted, women to realize how powerful we are together. So there's this staggering statistics that talk about, and that I know, that 0.006% of Black women raise venture capital, 2% of women raise venture capital. But with crowdfunding, for instance, women actually do better with the raising funds in a crowdfunding atmosphere. And what does crowdfunding take? Crowdfunding takes in community. So I remember going to ifundwomen.com to set up a rewards-based crowdfunding campaign. And I was able to raise the money that I needed to launch my website, do all the stuff I needed to do to get ready to launch. And all of that happened because other women read our story, believed in our mission, and said, hey, I'm gonna put $25 behind it, $50, $100, $250. And that's how we were able to raise the money to launch Lamique. So I think that, for me, community is everything, because we get to show each other what we can do when we come together, when we band together. And everybody's input and contribution can add up to mean a lot. And now our community shows up for us in so many different ways. For us to be on Ulta.com, that was because our community showed up and voted for us to win a pitch competition. And that's how we got on Ulta.com. It wasn't because I knew the buyers or anything like that. All of this work is from the ground up. This is like, I'm just like anybody else who's watching. Like people watching are probably more important than me. Like, I am not a celebrity. I am not anybody important. I'm just a regular old girl from Houston that, gets to travel a lot of different places so I can expose myself to different things. But it's nobody I knew, that was going to give me sort of this leg up, right? All I had was my faith in God and utilizing that to say, hey, when we come together, I seen it happen in church. I seen people raise money at church to pay, one of the ladies' light bills or something like that. I've seen people come together to do stuff, and that's why I saw it, and I sort of mimicked it in crowdfunding. And that's why I believe in community.
Why have you decided that kindness is a cornerstone of your business?
I remember someone asking me what Lamique stood for, Nancy. And I was Originally, I'll tell you, Lamique actually was my name spelled backwards, and the LA from my middle name. And but I never had told anybody that. That's just something, that's how I created the name, and that's what I had. But when someone asked me what Lamique stood for, in that moment, I said it out. I was like, and it was the first time anybody ever asked me what Lamique stood for. And I said, love and makeup and kindness. And so the first time somebody asked me what Lamique stood for, I could not say Kim spelled backwards. That didn't even come out, because all the work I did to put into creating Lamique, I was doing it beyond myself. Like, if it was for me, I would have not done it. Like, I would have stopped. Like, once the challenge comes up, I would have been like, I'm good. Let me go do something else. But it wasn't about me, and it's not about me. And so in that moment, when someone asked me, what does Lamique stand for? I said, love and makeup and kindness. And I said, love and kindness is your true makeup, because beauty is revealed and not applied. I think that for me growing up, makeup and all of that was associated with people. You had all these different stereotypes and connotations towards makeup. And I didn't identify with some of those. I didn't feel like I was just this pretty girl wearing makeup. Then I didn't feel like, I didn't feel like, oh, I want to just cover up and I want to put on makeup. I didn't feel like I was fitting in these boxes that people had put. And I was like, my love and my kindness, the way I am, the love I have for life and for people and for myself and for others, and the kindness that I show, that's what makes you beautiful. That makes you walk away from a person and says, man, that's a beautiful person, right? After you talk to a person, or after a person does a kind act, you're like, that is a beautiful person, right? And so I think that the beauty that is revealed is the beauty that's lasting.
Tell us about a time that you have persisted in your life and how you got through that.
I had my makeup shop that I ran from 2004 to 2018. And closing that makeup shop in 2018 for me was almost like how people feel when they leave their corporate job. Because I was so used to opening up that store every day, working inside of that store, having my staff there, we're so used to that life, that when I closed it, and I initiated the close because I had this vision of building a makeup line for 2020. And when I closed it, I was like, okay, excited. I got this vision. I'm going to revamp. I'm going to, really concentrate on the products. I'm going to launch Lamique, the product line, all of that. I had this vision. But about I joined an accelerator the month after I closed my store, April of 2018 in Austin, Texas, Div Inc. And when I first got in there, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be like, oh, just come up with some cute packaging, pick out some colors, some branding, launch your brand, And that's not what it was. I got tore down to the bare bones. I got tore down almost to just the foundation. You know how the people say you can you tear everything down, but keep the foundation and we're going to build back up. That's how I felt. I felt like I got torn down to the foundation. And it was like, no, you gotta really think through this. And so 2018, 2019, I had to be persistent to get through those times. You have to imagine, all I knew was having that store, having it open, and I'm trying to figure out e-commerce, and I was used to brick and mortar. This is when I had to persist. I had to persist in learning. A lot of us think about persisting in working, right? We think about just stay persistent in the work. What about when there's no work, it's only for you to learn? What about when you're in a learning season? And for someone who's used to, having a cash register full when they get done at the end of the night and all of that, right? But you're in a season of just learning. And it's like, you have to be persistent in learning. Wow. That was a season. So when 2020 came and we were ready to launch for March 2020, that was our date. The pandemic happened, everything, but for me, everything closed. What I did in 2018 happened for everybody in 2020. Brick and mortar closed, everybody closed, but I was opening up. And to be honest, it was the right type of attention for an e-commerce business to launch in. And so it gave me the opportunity, and it gave me a spotlight opportunity to come through with exactly what I had. And if I wouldn't have taken that time to get ready for 2020, I wouldn't have been ready. I would have still had a brick and mortar. I would have been reactive. I would have been reacting and responding to what's happening versus proactive, putting in the market what needed to be there for that time. And that's what I came in and did.
What does the term power of Passionistas mean to you?
When you think of passion, you think of being relentless. You think of being unwavering. You think of being crazy. You think of being, even to a certain extent, misunderstood. And sometimes it's not that you're doing something wrong, but it's other people's understanding. They're missing it. They're missing it, right? And they're understating what you're doing. And so, but then at some point, they rise up to the occasion to understand what you're doing at some point, at some time, at some juncture. And you have to be persistent enough to keep going till people get there, right? So when I think about the power of Passionistas, I think about this grid of power of people, of human beings, of women who are so passionate, so relentless, so crazy, so misunderstood, that they would continue to go beyond and be like a power grid for others to plug into that needed in the moment that they need it. And so what you all are doing, what you're standing up, this power grid that you have, that others like myself are able to plug into along our journey to give us the charge, to give us the battery life, to get through this journey of entrepreneurship and life and professionalism that it takes. So, you all just a power grid.
What's your dream for women?
To know that we are. We are fill in the blank after that, okay? We are the salt of the earth, okay? We are the divine beings that birth life, right? Like I just want women to know that we are what we've been waiting for. We are the answer. I want women really to fill in that blank at the end. I do believe in self-advocacy, and that's the reason why I answered that question towards my daughter, because I already know the promise that my daughter has on her life, so I know that she is. And when I think about women, I know that we are, and for women, it is a we situation. I think it is about us banding together. That's why I love the power grid of the Passionistas, power of the Passionistas. But I think that it's just that we are, and we get to fill in the blank. We are chemists. We are, owners of trash companies. We are, beauty pioneers. We are that fill in the blank. And I think that that's what I want women to know. It is time for us to just show up and define what womanhood looks like, and know that we are.
Our next award is the Passionistas Persist Vanguard Award, which honors a woman who's leading the way in the development of ideas and building communities. The award will be presented by Julie DeLuca Collins and Dali Rivera, who nominated this year's honoree. Julie is the founder and CEO of Go Confidently Services and the host of the popular Casa de Confidence podcast. Dali is the creator of the Diversity and Anti-Bullying Academy.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. My name is Julie DeLuca Collins, and I am here with my friend Dali Rivera to honor our friend and colleague, Danai Escanaverino. She is being honored with the 2022 Passionista Persist Vanguard Award for her great work celebrating, elevating, and connecting people in the Latin community.
Danae Canaverino is an award-winning Latina serial entrepreneur. She's a speaker and a community builder. As CEO of boutique digital agency Luna Sol Media, she connects brands to Latino consumers, delivering millions of leads and sales to her clients. A Cuban immigrant and the daughter of a political prisoner, Danae is fiercely passionate about elevating the Latino community. As founder of Latina Meetup, she has introduced thousands of Latina brands to millions of consumers. And as a founder of Amigos, she has facilitated hundreds of job recruitments, grants, scholarships, and other resources for Latino professionals. Danae is a board member of Latinas in Business and is a mentor for several accelerators and Latino youth programs. She's pretty amazing.
Danae, congratulations and thank you again for all of the work that you do on behalf of Latinas and women overall. You embody this award, so thank you for being here.
Thank you, Julie, and thank you, Dali, for this gorgeous award. And thank you to the Passionistas Project. I have to tell you that, when you do stuff that you're so passionate about and you get recognized, it's just that much more amazing because it means that people get it. People get the impact of what you're so passionate about. And so I'm absolutely humbled, especially being presented by two women that I am so much a fan of. So yeah, I'm super thrilled. Thank you so much for this award. I'm absolutely humbled and very happy to receive it. Thank you.
Well, again, congratulations. What are you passionate about?
I am passionate about Latinos, Latinidad, the Latino community, and specifically about us being unified in supporting each other. And I really that's my thing. I'm an immigrant. I came from Cuba when I was a little girl. My dad was a political prisoner. And, even though in the last, probably since the 2016 election, right, where the conversation about Latinos turned really sour and it was all about how we were a drain on the economy and a drain on the immigration system. And that's not what I grew up with. I grew up in Miami in thriving neighborhoods, businesses. We make the economy go. We've brought the economy back from the last two recessions. And so we lead in job creation, we lead in business creation, we lead in entrepreneurialism. And so I just want to continue to change how we talk about Latinos and how we support each other as a community. And so I'm super passionate about that. And that's kind of why I do the things I do. That's why I'm really big into community and making sure that we foster opportunities for Latinos to lead and Latinos to help each other out.
What does the power of Passionista mean to you?
The power is in the name, right? So when you're passionate and you're led by that passion, I think that just translates into power, and it's up to you how you want to use that power. So really, it's all in the name for me.
Why is it important for women to lift each other up?
Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it? And nothing against men. I have some amazing men in my life that I have a lot of respect for. Heck, my best mentor was my big brother, right? But they navigate through life with a totally different lens. Everybody has a different lens based on so many different variables, right? And so you don't know what you don't know. It's like my kids. My kids don't know what it's like to be poor. My kids don't know what it's like not to be able to pay for your light bill, right? And so I can tell them as much as I want until I'm blue in the face about what it was like growing up without anything, but they'll never know. And so that's kind of the same thing with men. Men just don't know the challenges that women face. They can be great allies, but you don't know what you don't know. And so because we are women, we have that in common. We understand those challenges that we face, whether it's misogyny, whether it's, pay inequality, all of the different wonderful challenges that women face. So it's up to us to help each other out. It's up to us to elevate each other and really walk that walk with each other, because nobody else is going to do it. So it's our responsibility, and we need to take that responsibility and really help each other out and, be sisters and do our thing for each other, help each other out.
Could you talk a little bit about the actual work that you help and that you do on a day in and day out to elevate the voices, to elevate the community, and to really push forward initiatives that help to support the Latino community?
First, let me tell you a little bit about what I do for a living. I own a digital agency. I've been in digital marketing for over 25 years. I joke that I'm a digital dinosaur, but really I am. And so I have the privilege of working with brands to connect them to multicultural consumers, mostly Latino consumers in the US and in Latin America, also in Spain and Portugal. And so I have this point of view that's very different because I see, being that I have to deal with the data, I see just how important we are as a demographic, right? We represent over 2 trillion in GDP. 2 trillion in GDP. We create the GDP of a country, and not even a developing nation, like a full-on country. So when I see those numbers, right, and I see what we represent, and, you know, I do a lot of work with market research and to make, you know, basically because we want to make sure that our clients know how important it is to work with us. I see that and it just fuels me. It absolutely fuels me because I know most Latinos do not know this information, right? Again, the narrative has always been pretty damn negative. And it's just gotten worse since that election. So I really, really wanted to make sure that, number one, we were educated about how important we are. And then number two, that I could find resources leveraging the clients that I work with to really help out. And what I mean by that is when I launched Latina Meetup, for example, in 2018, I made everything free. Everything was free. We had this multi-city tour of events where we had Latina professionals come in, and I had sponsors that wanted to reach this demographic fund these events. And what did we do? We gave free headshot photography to every single woman that showed up that wanted to have a new professional headshot. We introduced Latina brands at all of these events so that they didn't have to pay to be marketed to their demographic, right? All of that was free. And a lot of professional development opportunities. Again, all of it free because I really believe that the brands could fuel that, could fund that, and we could have all of these resources for people that really needed them. And we did a bunch of like scholarship opportunities, and we give away a lot of free marketing to the community. And so when the pandemic hit, yay, in 2020, we couldn't have any in-person events anymore. So I translated that into, we started having Zoom events, but it really didn't feel the same. And then Clubhouse happened. And I got onto Clubhouse and I didn't see any Latinos, but my brain was already like, you know, the synapses were sparking. And I was like, there's something here, there's something here, there's an opportunity. So I just started having these networking events every single morning. And every single morning we'd get more people joining and more people joining. And the community ended up, you know, being like 38,000 strong. And we started having events where we featured Latinas You Should Know, which Dali has been a great integral part of that, where we've interviewed Latinas that are doing great things in our community, whether they're an author or a speaker. You know, I mean, we had the president of the Girl Scouts, and we had Dolores Huerta, and so many amazing people. And I just wanted to make sure we connected them with our community so that we could support Latino initiatives. We've done recruitment events to get people jobs. We've done educational stuff. All of it framed around supporting our community, elevating our gente, and giving opportunities and connecting people with opportunities, like what we did with the Comcast Grant Initiative. Those are some of the things that we've been able to do with these communities, always keeping everything 100% free, because I really believe that, you know, the brands will support it.
Do you have a time where you felt that you really had to persist?
I've had my struggles, right? I came over here as an immigrant. We were poor. My dad was an alcoholic, very toxic childhood. I was the only woman in many spaces in my, in the early parts of my career. I would go to trade shows with like 10,000 people, and I was like one of maybe a few women, and definitely the only Latina in meetings. My gosh, I remember the first time I went into a board meeting as a director of marketing for a company, a startup that had been acquired. And the CEO, I guess he didn't like my confidence. And he actually tried to belittle me and ask me to order coffee for everybody when really I was there to make a presentation about all of the things that we were working on. And stuff like that has happened consistently in my life. But I have something that I feel like it's a superpower, and that is my perspective. My perspective is I am so lucky. I literally won the freaking life lottery just for the fact that I get to live in the United States and I get to chase my dreams and my goals, and it's all on me. And I get to bring people with me along the ride when they want to come with me and if they're ready. And that's why I'm always trying to educate our community about, look, we're super powerful. Change your perspective. A lot is wrong in society. A lot is wrong in the world. A lot is wrong in this country, but a lot is right. And mostly the opportunity is right. I have 60 something cousins and aunts and uncles still living in Cuba who have absolutely zero future, zero opportunity, can barely make, ends meet. There are no ends to meet. There's nothing there. So that's my perspective. Every time I feel like something is difficult or I have something to overcome, that perspective kind of reminds me, okay, but you're in a position of real privilege because you have opportunity and it's on you.
Danai, what's in the future for you?
My goal right now is to continue to build our community and continue to teach people how to be influencers. Some people already are, they just need a little bit of help with the branding or whatever. Again, always being free. So my view is in the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to have an army of Latino influencers that are going to be just doing great, whether they want to be paid as a creator or whether they want to be a speaker, but hopefully getting them to also continue to share the message that we are important, we are powerful, and we need to stick together and be unified.
What is one word that you want to leave with the listeners that they know, they're not meant necessarily a Latino or part of the community, but how can they participate and be a part of the community and part of our table and also make an impact?
There is a word in Spanish that I use a lot. It's dale, which means let's go. It's if you are passionate, if you're looking for a community, if you're looking to grow, to be mentored, to mentor, come hang out with amigos and dale, just let's go.
For our next award, we held an audience vote contest and asked the Passionistas community to vote daily for the woman-funded or woman-centric 501c3 that they wanted to see honored with the Passionistas Persist Visionary Award. The nominees were To Live to Cure, Aaron's Coffee Corner, Batonage Woman in Wine, Be Humanitarian, Home of Champions, Mary Rose Foundation, Miri's List, Paint the World, and Project You First. You can learn more about all of these amazing organizations at thepassionistasproject.com.
The recipient of tonight's Passionistas Persist Visionary Award is Carolyn Koppel from Aaron's Coffee Corner. Carolyn began Aaron's Coffee Corner after spending many long nights in the pediatric intensive care unit with her son Aaron. Her organization provides 24/7 access to free, fresh, quality coffee in the family great rooms of hospital PICUs. Aaron's Coffee Corner's mission is to provide the smallest of comforts to the family, friends, and caregivers of critically ill children by providing something familiar in an unfamiliar place. So it's our honor to present the Passionistas Persist Visionary Award to Carolyn Koppel.
It's an honor to receive the Passionistas Persist Visionary Award for our efforts in providing direct support to people that often get overlooked in the medical jungle we call healthcare. Parents are a crucial part of the puzzle, and Erin's Coffee Corner wants them to know that we see them. Providing a daily dose of comfort in the form of coffee and tea is the least we can do to acknowledge their courage, their grit, and determination while they care for their children in a uniquely stressful situation. Erin's Coffee Corner is thrilled to accept this award on behalf of all of our persistent supporters who voted and acknowledged the work that parents, families, and caregivers and guardians do for their critically ill children, not only when they are in the hospital, but what they do for them every day. We would never have been able to make the progress we have made without the help of Keurig Dr. Pepper, the Ann and Robert Lurie Children's Hospital of Chicago, and all of our supporters, family, and friends who voted. They voted with their daily Wordle or, with their morning coffee, or they stopped me on the street while I was walking my dog to tell me they were voting every day. And it was just such an honor to know that people were out there listening and supporting us, and we had no idea. It's just an honor to receive this award. It's our first. We hope we set an example that will allow it to be the first of many. We are so proud of the organization because Erin is a part of it, and we are all in the now, and people can see where the idea was born, and we just thank you for acknowledging us. It's really, really lovely.
Tell us what you're most passionate about.
My passions have changed over the years, and right now, those things that are most important to me is helping other people. So as we have worked on our project, I see the impact that we have made, and it creates a greater passion for me to continue what we're doing. I think Erin's Coffee Corner and my son Erin are my drivers, and they're my passion at the moment, along with the rest of my family.
Tell everybody a little bit about Erin.
Oh, Erin is 17 years old. We started Erin's Coffee Corner when he was 13. He is nonverbal and non-ambulatory. He has an underlying disorder called dihydropyrimidine dehydrogenase deficiency. Right now, he's the only living survivor of this disorder at this age. So we're very lucky to have him, and we've had great help along the way. He is a critically ill child all the time. He is chronically ill. He suffers from epilepsy, but he's, all those things that he can't do. One of the things he can do is he can light up a room with his smile. He's super handsome. He's engaged with the world around him. And we are proud of all the things that he has done in these last 17 years. And what he has given us has really created an outlook of, appreciation. It's kind of cliche, but you really do appreciate every day he wakes up. So it's just one of those, he's just really the light in our lives in so many ways, and so many other people's life as well.
Tell us more about Erin's Coffee Corner's mission.
Erin's Coffee Corner provides a safe place for people to go and get direct support by getting a cup of coffee or a cup of tea in the family great rooms at Lurie Children's Hospital's pediatric intensive care units and their neonatal intensive care unit now. So we've created a space where they can go grab a cup of coffee or tea and really just take a moment to get out of their room with their sick child and refresh and just clear their mind for a minute. So what we try and do is create an environment where people feel they can take a moment for themselves and really stay present for their child while they're in the hospital.
So many charities focus on the patients. Why did you decide to create an organization that really focuses more on the families?
Because I am the family. it was a selfish thing to do, right? It was all about me one night late in a room by myself, and I needed coffee. So I think that it makes it even more important because it's part of my community. And I realize that these people need coffee like I need coffee in the middle of the night or whenever I'm admitted into a pediatric intensive care unit because my son is sick. So I think that it was just circumstance that brought me to the place where I could think about providing something that I know others would really appreciate. And that took me a long time to do. I mean, Erin is 17, and the first few years are hard. It's hard to have a critically ill child that you're caring for 24/7. I had a lot of help, and I'm very lucky about that. But there's a lot of mourning, of loss, of all the things that you're not going to have with your child. And it takes a long time to kind of work through. And it's been 14 years past his prognosis. He wasn't supposed to live past the age of 3. So when we look around at ourselves, we're very lucky. Erin is pretty healthy. And I think that is what triggered me thinking, oh, maybe we can do something for others who are in the same situation because we've been there. We know what the situation is and how we can help them. And I knew from personal experience that coffee was something that was missing, to help those families, because if you help the family recover, the child's going to recover, right? If the people that are caring for the child are tired and disillusioned and disappointed and upset, those kinds of things can be managed a little bit by having a little time to themselves, to restoring their own being, their self-worth, how to get back in the game and walk back into that room and really stand up for their child and help their child get better.
Tell us about a time in your life that you persisted and how you got through it.
Trying to get Erin's Coffee Corner off the ground is my key persistent moment. It took close to a year for things to kind of get everybody in line and on the same page, and to say just to say yes to helping these parents in the pediatric intensive care unit. You'd think that there was already coffee there. And what they used to have was like a bun burner, like a bun stove with a glass coffee pot, and it was always dirty. And I'm like, no, we can make that better for you. And you'd think they'd say, oh, that would be great. But there's a lot of ins and outs and politics and bureaucracy when it comes to a major hospital. And we're lucky enough that we were able to, work it out so we could at least start a pilot project. And I knew once we got in there, it was going to be hard to get rid of us. So my goal was to make it as successful as I could in the first 4 months and make sure that they saw that our fundraising could keep up with what was needed. So, because it's always hard to take things away from people. And a lot of people in the pediatric intensive care unit are there often. It's not a fun place, but they end up there because their kids are sick. So it's something that people would notice if it was gone all of a sudden. So the idea of just being sure that we were proving our worth not to the families and not to the PICU staff and not to the PICU doctors that were using it, but to the bureaucracy that surrounds an organization like this. So I feel like we were pretty persistent and we got it done. And now we have 2 machines. I'm hoping for a 3rd. So we'll see where it goes, but persistence paid off in this particular situation.
What's your dream for Erin's Coffee Corner?
The dream changes. I find that I get an Instagram post from a family at Lori's, and they say how much it's meant to them to have this coffee. They've been there for 42 days, and that makes staying at Lori's and just Lori's worth it, because I know that we're really having a direct impact on the people that are using it. I think pre-COVID, we had like a 5-year plan, which is now maybe like an 8-year plan. And we would like to spread it to a couple of other hospitals, either locally or a hospital that has a number of hospitals throughout the country. And that would be creating it in a way that we could help them with a grant and create like a lesson plan or a syllabus on how to raise money and how the hospital should raise money. Because what we do for Lurie's is a separate entity, even though they help us collect money. And I think that it's important as we move forward that the hospitals know how to continue that relationship with their families and how to build on the fact that they are doing something for the families, and how working with families can also help children thrive when they are ill. That's our goal. I don't know when we're going to get there. I'm feeling that the Lurie's needs us right now. And I feel like we are helping a pretty large population because they're a large hospital, right? But I would like to help smaller hospitals as we move forward. And that's why I really want them to take part in the fundraising and maybe find a family that could support Erin's Coffee Corner as a fundraising family. So I have all these ideas in my head, but right now we're focusing on Erin's Coffee Corner and how we raise our funds and that we can continue the legacy. I mean, we're in our 4th year, and we'd like that to be for 40 years. There's no end in sight for our work at Lurie's. So it depends on where the path leads.
Tell us what the phrase power of Passionistas means to you.
It is an interesting concept because, women run the world. And I think that the idea of women supporting women is kind of overlooked and sometimes not really appreciated. So I think that it's really important for people to remember that we should be supporting one another as women. And we should be supporting people that are believing in what they're doing, because everyone that is participating in this is really trying to find a way to help others be their best selves. Whether that is, remembering to be kind or remembering how to act in an office or to vote, those are all things that can bring more gusto to what women can do in the world. And it's an important time to remember that women have a say in what happens in the world, and we should really take advantage of it.
What's your dream for women?
Wow, I would like them to get paid as much as men. I would like them to be appreciated for working from home. I would like them to have a right to choose what to do with their body. I mean, these are all very basic things that really haven't quite hit the threshold yet. And I think that we need to look around and help those basic levels of necessity be reached.
Our next award this evening is the Passionistas Persist Trailblazer Award. The definition of trailblazer is a pioneer, an innovator, a person who makes a new track through wild country. Tonight's recipient is an activist and author who is pushing boundaries for women daily in this wild country we live in. The award is being presented by Dr. Melissa Bird, a feminist, author, healer, and coach. Melissa's purpose in this world is to teach women how to step into their truth and quit playing small.
I am so pleased to be presenting the 2022 Passionistas Persist Trailblazer Award to my amazing, inspiring friend, Soraya Chemaly. Soraya is an award-winning author and activist. is the former executive director of the Representation Project and director and co-founder of the Women's Media Center Speech Project. And she has long been committed to expanding women's civic and political participation. One of the things I love and adore about Soraya is that she is the author of one of my most favorite books, Rage Becomes Her, The Power of Women's Anger. And I do not think it is any coincidence that this year of all years, I get the privilege and the honor of presenting Soraya with this incredible Trailblazer Award. So Soraya, thank you so much for joining me today to receive this amazing, beautiful, awesome, well-deserved award, because you are certainly blazing many trails in my life and the lives of so many of us.
Thank you so much, Missy, and thank you to the Passionista Project. I am really genuinely so honored. It has been a difficult year. It's been a difficult decade, actually. And honestly, it's just nice to know that organizations like yours are thinking about the work that people are doing that requires this kind of persistence, which doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as hope. But really and truly, I'm genuinely very, very honored and delighted to be able to have this chance to have a conversation with you again, and want to just say thank you very much.
You and I, in our professional work, Soraya, we work with so many organizations and so many people who are trying.
Yes.
But the thing that I love about the Passionistas Project is they are doing in such an authentically beautiful way. And so the first thing I really want to talk with you about today is about the power of the Passionistas and this mission of bringing all these women together from literally all over the world. Yes. To talk about making change with diversity, equity, and inclusion, truly doing it this time. Yes. Like the lineup just blows my mind every time I think about it. So what does the power of Passionistas mean to you?
When I first heard Passionista, my response was a little bit viscerally to think, oh, hold on, that's a word that I personally have heard, that you have heard, that many of us have heard, that's used dismissively. You're so passionate about that project you work on, right? As though some of the issues that we are fighting against are pet projects that we do in our spare time because it makes us feel happy, you know? And so I actually had that initial response, but what I really came to understand and think about was the fact that there's no reason to reject the word passionate or the idea of what it implies and clearly means in this context. I mean, these are women from all over the world who are dedicating their lives to making change, often in situations of grave danger, of risk, of political violence. Increasingly, we know this is the case. Increasingly, we know that the people at the forefront of so many movements, environmental movements, climate change, indigenous rights, abortion, reproductive rights, racial justice, it's over and over and over again. Women, Black women, queer women, trans women, women who are just pushed farther and farther and farther into the margins. And so I think it's really important to understand what it means. Honestly, the word kind of, to me, lies at the nexus of the personal and political that some people have the luxury to think are separate, right? We know that that's a decades old expression from the feminist world, that the personal is political. But a lot of people really still benefit from separating those two things. And you know, we gain nothing by pretending that they're separated.
I think we have to have passion to keep moving on. If we remain passionate about the things that deeply impact our lives and our world and the world of other people, particularly all of the women you just mentioned, we start talking about disabled women, women who are engaging in decolonizing work. We start talking about rebellious women, women who are trying to get educated and disrupting the education system. When we think about those people being the ones who are potentially going to get us through, then we have to understand passion. Because without passion, the drive in hopeless moments becomes diminished. And so, what are you the most passionate about?
When the Dobbs decision came down, I think, like a lot of people, I burst out crying. And the thing is that you've been doing this work, I've been doing this work for, it feels like decades, right? There was no surprise in this at all. There was just profound loss and disappointment and sadness and rage. That's how I felt, and it was just so eviscerating, actually, because I think that if you have been on this side of this fight, seriously, you understand what just happened, what we just lost, what it represents. And that's not to diminish other losses at all, but it's such a turning point to have the right taken away. But it is a really critical point and a great unraveling.
What are the things that you really want to help people who are part of this Passionistas Summit understand about taking our rage and using it to blaze wherever we're going?
There are a few things that really still strike me. It's been 3 years since the book was published. And, it's one of these books, I think, that has a very long tail, because in fact, there is an evergreen quality to these ideas, and we want to understand emotionality. And we, in particular, I think, want to understand the role it plays in our cognition, because if you are a woman or femme identifying, you know how quickly and easily people dismiss you if you express anger, which is why so many of us try not to show anger, feel anger, display anger. We've grown up being punished for it or mocked for it. That's the number one worry women have. It's not that someone's going to be violent. It is that they will be mocked for expressing anger, which is an expression of need or an assertion of will, right? And we're not supposed to have either of those things. But I think that there are a few things. One is to be a trailblazer and to use your passionate feelings and beliefs doesn't require that you take on the whole world all at once or have an institution or a structure. The whole fact of trailblazing is that you find a new way. You find a way that makes sense to you. And then most times it also makes sense to other people, but they just either didn't do it or didn't think of it or didn't have the time, but are so appreciative of the fact that you might do it. And so for some people, that might be organizing a local choir to resist peacefully in a certain way, right? To other people, it may be writing legislation. To other people, it may be mobilizing transportation. Who knows what it is, right? But I think it's really important to not feel paralyzed by the idea that there's a way to trailblaze. The point is, it's risky. Yes. You have to take the risk. People may call you stupid or, any number of terrible, terrible names, which 100% will happen. So you really have to really fundamentally be okay with people not liking you. That's the other lesson that really strikes me about being passionate and being angry. As part of that, we are so expected and socialized to be likable and to put others first and not make other people uncomfortable. Trailblazing always makes people uncomfortable. We need more people to be very profoundly uncomfortable.
When we come together and hold each other in all of this and we connect wherever we're at, then we can start to figure out ways to move through this.
Yeah, and I think too, in terms of coming to terms with what all of that really means, I think that what's very clear is that communities that have been under-resourced and punished for centuries, right? They have been responsible for themselves. They have already been at war with the government. They have already been punished repeatedly by the society.
Yes.
This is not new.
No.
Honestly, what's new right now, I think, is the shock to white communities, just like when Trump was elected, frankly.
Yeah.
Right. Just the shock of it to some people that, my God, it can actually happen. And you're like, yeah, it can.
Yeah, sure enough.
And it can, because it has. It's happened over and over and over again. And so that circle of people who are negatively affected is now bigger. And I think part of the problem is the instinct in many communities is, well, we need to do something. And then they start from new, instead of stepping back and thinking, this would be a really good time to educate myself, to listen, to learn, to support the leaders who've already been doing this, the communities that understand how to do this, and I know this too. I will say this flat out because I have seen this over and over again. What often happens, particularly you've seen this too, right? In feminist organizations, but philanthropic organizations that aren't specifically feminist, white women will replicate patriarchal power structures by default, and they will act in ways that are corrosive to other types of organizations and societies. So very hierarchical, very dominant, very power over, very top down. We've seen that destroy organizations over and over again. So I think it's just really important in this moment to step back and be very self-reflective. How am I contributing to this problem structurally without knowing it? What mistakes have I made? What can I learn? How can I be quiet? How can I learn? How can I learn is really, I think, possibly the most important thing the question people can ask right now. We all can learn.
The night that Saturday Night Live premiered in 1975, we slipped downstairs after our parents went to bed to watch the show with our older siblings. Our lives were changed forever. Before that moment, the comedians and actors we saw on TV were our parents' contemporaries. But when the Not Ready for Primetime players blasted through our set, we saw our sisters on the screen. At just 24, Laraine Newman was part of a renegade group breaking down doors for the next generation.
Laraine hit the SNL stage with impressive credits already on her resume. She had studied mime with Marcel Marceau in Paris, was a founding member of the legendary Los Angeles improv troupe The Groundlings, and honed her skills developing original characters.
SNL launched Laraine into rock star status, but it's only one of her many accomplishments in her multi-decade career. She's appeared on hit television shows like St. Elsewhere and Friends, and worked in film with legendary directors like Guillermo del Toro.
Laraine is on the board of San Francisco Sketchfest, regularly appears in the long-running award-winning Broadway show Celebrity Autobiography, and has written for Esquire, The Believer, and McSweeney's. And she's one of the most prolific voiceover actors in the business, lending her talents to animated classics including Finding Nemo, Monsters, Inc., Despicable Me, and Shrek.
As she says in her memoir, May You Live in Interesting Times, she bore witness to and participated in many significant cultural moments in the country, and that's pretty cool. And through it all, she persisted. So it is our distinct honor to award the Passionistas Persist Icon Award to Laraine Newman.
Thank you so much to the Passionistas Project for this award. It's a privilege to be able to follow your passions in life, in my case, all things comedy, and to ultimately make a living at it. I don't take that lightly. The field I work mostly in now, animation voiceover, is very egalitarian because nobody can see you. You're anonymous. They just know what you can do with your voice. What I've learned is that in a business like mine, you have to be good enough at what you do as to be undeniable. And that takes courage in the face of so much failure and rejection. Well, courage and what the hell else am I going to do? I don't have any hobbies. I continue to try and improve my skills, to learn new things and see what other people are doing, new voices, points of view, and style. That inspires me so much. Although I've worked hard, I suspect I've had less obstacles than the other people that are championed by this wonderful organization, the marginalized, to be specific. As the mother of 2 LGBTQ children, I see progress. The world is more open to them than it might have been, say, 20 years ago. But we have a long way to go. And thankfully, there are entities like the Passionistas Project that are the uplifting gatekeepers, if you will. Again, thank you so much.
What are you most passionate about?
Well, I'm passionate about, I guess, justice in the first place. I'm passionate about my kids. I'm passionate about my interests, which range from cooking to comedy. So I guess you could say that's a distillation of some of the things I'm passionate about.
You were one of the founding members of the Groundlings with your sister Tracy. So what was the atmosphere like for women in improv at the time?
Well, we had a great director, Gary Austin, and he was, it was a meritocracy for sure. Whoever had something funny, that's what went up. And I think that the world of comedy at that point was just at a turning point. The Comedy Store had just opened. There were lots of clubs along Beverly Boulevard. There were drag clubs. There was Wayland Flowers and Madam. There was a great Australian comedian named Daphne Davis, who was also an impressionist. And there was a openly gay comic at the Comedy Store named Falstaff Wilde. So I think, even though there is a polemic about women in comedy back then, I never experienced that.
You went on to be part of the original cast of the Not Ready for Primetime Players on Saturday Night Live. So talk a little bit about what it felt like to be involved in creating this iconic show, and if you ever even imagined the groundwork you were laying or the doors you were opening.
Well, it was impossible to have that kind of perspective. I just knew that all of us represented a different kind of style and tone from the disparate parts that we came from: Chicago, Toronto, New York, California. And it was a great kind of stew of a whole new generation of people that represented something that you'd never seen on TV before. We, were so kind of, the redheaded stepchild for NBC, wanting to just slam something into that time slot, because Johnny Carson didn't want the reruns on Saturdays. So we never even imagined anybody was watching us. But it was thrilling to be able to say, hey, I want to write a sketch about a girl who's from the Valley as a stewardess. Well, I've done that in the Groundlings, but, can I do that? Yes, you can. What? Great, So it was that kind of thing.
Do you feel like you and Gilda and Jane supported each other and leaned on each other back then? And what kind of ways did you do that?
Because we all came from an improv background, that's a very cooperative art form. So naturally, we supported one another. The high stakes competition we weren't really aware of until later, but we all knew that none of us could do what the other one could do. So it wasn't a matter of competing with each other. We were really competing with ourselves.
You are one of the queens of creating characters. So what's that process for you?
The process of creating characters is, my God, usually in the beginning for people, it's an amalgam of the people they grew up with, the things that they noticed. And I was such a minor bird. I mean, I was fascinated by dialects, and there were just characters all around me that I later exemplified.
What's the power of comedy?
It offers so many things. It offers the ability to frame things in a way that tells the truth without being necessarily threatening. I think George Carlin's really a good example of that, because he distilled things and he arranged the anatomy of things like hypocrisy and corporate greed and organized religion. He arranged it in such a way that people could see the flaw in the argument. And so I think, if anything, hopefully it furthers the dialogue on things.
You have two incredibly talented children, Spike and Hannah Einbender. What's your dream for their future?
They're already pretty much self-supporting, which, it's like, I've done my job as a parent, I'm so proud of them for that. They have a great work ethic, so it's not like something that I have to worry about them having. They already have it. I hope that they see a world that is a lot better than the one that is around right now.
What advice do you give to them?
Like, they would take my advice. I've learned as a parent that, unless it's solicited, it's perceived as criticism. So if they seek my advice, then, always it's like, continue to learn. That's all I can say.
Is there a moment in your journey of following your passions that you think would be most inspiring to people?
The moment I decided to pursue voiceover, even though it was a really hard world to break into, I just knew that I figured out that was what I was perfectly suited to do. I wasn't as invested in being an actor or being on camera. I loved the idea of working and acting with my voice. And I auditioned for shows for 2 years, and I got roles, but I didn't get series regular roles. And then I studied with a guy named Charlie Adler and Chris Zimmerman. And, I think the willingness to continue to learn and recognize that there are certain aspects of a technique that you might need help with, being willing to do that is so important. Being willing to continue to learn is everything.
What does the phrase power of passionistas mean to you?
Passion drives everything we do, the wish to achieve, the wish to evolve. I think helping others to recognize the process of achievement and the struggle of achievement is a really great endeavor.
Our final award this evening is the Passionistas Persist Humanitarian Award, which honors a woman who spends her days in pursuit of equal rights and promoting human welfare for all people. The award is being presented by Kara Reedy, a journalist, actor, director, and photographer. As the director of the Disabled Journalists Association, Kara knows that the world is missing out on some of the best stories on the planet, and the journalist in her knows that can't stand.
I met Rebecca 3 years ago when I was interviewing her for a documentary I was working on at The Guardian. Literally, the moment we clapped eyes on each other, she screamed, "You don't get down with that LPA bullshit either." I knew we would be friends immediately. Rebecca is a second-generation activist. She's been around since she could ride on her godmother's wheelchair to protest. She was the co-founder and director of the Disability Justice Initiative at Center for American Progress, where she built out a progressive policy platform that protected the rights and services disabled people depend on for survival, and also developed innovative solutions like a proposed disabled worker tax credit and increased access to capital for disability-owned small businesses. She stewarded a campaign that resulted in an unprecedented 12 presidential candidates developing disability policy platforms. She's a 3-time presidential appointee. Rebecca served in key policy roles at the Department of Education and the Department of Health and Human Services, as well as oversaw diversity and inclusion efforts for the Obama administration. I'm honored to present her with the Passionistas Persist Humanitarian Award.
Thank you so much, Kara. It is such a tremendous honor to accept the 2022 Passionistas Persist Humanitarian Award. 43 years ago, my parents, both people with dwarfism, recorded an interview for a local news station where they said that they hoped for a future for their child where people with dwarfism would not be jokes, could achieve any job they desired, and live a life free from discrimination. Their work as activists and advocates paved the road that led me to youth leadership programs, to the University of California, Santa Cruz, Go Banana Slugs, the White House, numerous campaigns, and today at the Ford Foundation. As the mom of three, I find myself honestly wishing the same thing for my children today, 43 years later. If there was anything I learned from my mom, a single mom who became a single mom when my dad left us after she got accepted into college, was a lesson in persistence. Sometimes the only way out is through. And in troubling times like these, there is no one else I would rather be in the trenches with, working our way through all of this hot mess, than all of you fellow Passionistas. Thank you again for this tremendous honor.
I always like to think about like how people grew up, and like I grew up in a house full of Black people because we're Black, that persisted through the civil rights movement. But I didn't have a full understanding of like disability as an identity, how they intersect. Just I was a little behind kind of in my understanding of disability and oppression. How do you feel like you being a second generation activist in this space has prepared you to attack the problems of oppression of disabled people? How did your understanding of your oppression as a child lead you to this, and having your parents kind of lead you to it?
My parents never hesitated to talk about either our oppression that we faced as people with dwarfism or the privilege that we face. And, you know, you see, I have a Good Trouble banner up in the background. My dad was the son of a federal judge in Selma, Alabama. I have no problem using the term, a white supremacist federal judge in Selma, Alabama, who routinely threw freedom riders in jail, who oversaw the travesty that was the Reverend James Reeb trial, and who filed an injunction that made it a violation of the law for 3 or more African Americans to congregate in Selma and talk about voting. And that history was never hidden from me. My parents were very open in talking about how my dad was raised, how he was brought up, his parents and siblings' perception of the world and their place in it. And, you know, for my dad, yes, he was, you know, the younger son of this big time jackass of a judge, but my dad was also the only little person in his family. And so, you know, wherever they went, yes, he was the judge's kid, but he was also the dwarf. And his older brother had schizophrenia. So in a very Southern, very patriarchal family, both sons were disabled. And I think that was something that was never lost on my dad. His brother became institutionalized when my dad was a teenager, and his brother was in his early 20s. And so while, yes, he grew up with a lot of privilege, he also grew up with a brother that, you know, nobody talked about. And then he was the heir, or, you know, you had the heir and the spare, if we're going to, you know, use a monarchy term. And the spare was a little person. And so, you know, my dad spent a lot of time thinking about what his life was like. And my dad grew up with gay friends in Alabama and saw how they were treated, and ended up at a Little People convention where he met my mom, who was the number 5 of 9 kids, all red-haired flower children. And it was love at first sight. My dad went home to Alabama and packed up his 69 Camaro and drove it from Selma to San Francisco. And they got married like 6 months after my mom turned 18. And my mom was also the only person with dwarfism in her family. And growing up in the Bay Area at the height of the AIDS epidemic, my dad ran a center for independent living. My mom ran a disabled student center at a community college. And so they were losing friends and students and clients left and right. And I remember as a kid, like my parents skipping my ice skating lesson for us to go to funerals. And I remember like being like, why are we going to another funeral? And my parents being like, nobody deserves to die alone. Like, we have a responsibility to show up for people. And that was always my parents' core value. And, you know, we would talk about things. Like, I remember when I had the realization that my dad's best friend was gay. And I remember asking my dad, why does Uncle Don's roommate come with us whenever we go anywhere? Like, why does Mark come with us? And my dad was like, well, that's his roommate. And my mom was like, come on, Billy, like, give me a break. And my dad was like, that's his partner. They love each other. And like, I was 6. And so it was like, oh, they love each other. Okay, that's cool. Like, whatever. You know, so my parents were really open in both talking about sort of the ways they moved about the world, but also the fact that that there was oppression and that we had to talk about it, and that it wasn't always like stiff upper lip or, you know, pick yourself up from the bootstraps. That there are days that it really sucks being a disabled person. And like, they didn't hide that from me.
You also kind of touched on like grief being a really big part of being disabled. I don't say that lightly, but whenever I say this or bring up something that's negative around disability, people are like, we knew it. And it's like, no, you don't really get it. Like, that's not what we mean by that, but there is a level of grief that is involved in being disabled, because the systems let you down so often. How do you navigate your grief to keep moving?
I was in your spot and I was interviewing Senator Tammy Duckworth when we launched the project that I was running at the time at the Center for American Progress. And I asked her about it as a disabled woman veteran. And she said, you know, Becca, sometimes you just have to embrace the suck. And I thought that phrase was so perfect. And I was like, I've never heard anyone just say it like that. And she's like, yeah, there's days it totally sucks. And there's days that it's really rough. And that's the reality. And we don't do any of us a service by not being willing to talk about that. And I remember coming across a book on dwarfism recently, actually, that had my mom's story in it. And my mom talked about how when she was 16, my grandpa took her to Muir Woods, just north of San Francisco. And with a family of 9 kids, nobody got alone time with parents. It just doesn't happen. And my grandfather sat in the car with my mom in the Volkswagen Bug that they had and told her she was never going to get any bigger. And her talking about her mourning process. And like, that wasn't something my parents did for me. And so, you know, there are days when it sucks. I mean, I remember there was a job I really wanted, a vice president for health justice for a progressive women's organization. I was a finalist. And then they called me to tell me I wasn't getting the job. And what they said, and I quote, was, our organization is not ambitious enough to hire someone like you. And I was like, what the hell? Like, is that a compliment? Is it an insult? Like, how do I even take that? And I remember being like, oh, okay. Like, you're proud that your organization has such a ass backwards view about the world. You know, and so I think it's just, it doesn't mean you're not proud in who you are. It actually means that you have just you know who you are.
Can you talk a little bit about how you've approached kind of building this groundbreaking sort of platform and base?
For so long, the number one thing holding back work in the disability rights and justice space was we don't have money. And so I remember when I was at the National Council on Disability, actually, no, even before that, I remember when I was working for President Obama, and I needed to find people with disabilities that were experts in housing policy. And I made like 30 calls and I couldn't find anybody. I was just like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Why is there this problem? And, you know, part of the problem is because people with disabilities live in a state of legalized, codified poverty. And so folks don't go to college or can't go to college, can't afford going to college. Or if they go to college, they can't work because if they work, they'll lose their health insurance. And I remember just being like, what would it be like if like money wasn't the problem? Like, what could we build? And so I started years ago building this list that was originally entitled Things That We Need. And it was like a cross disability rights community housing portfolio, like policy agenda. Like what do we, like, what are the issues? What are the problems, et cetera? Like, what else do we need? Why do we keep, I remember saying, like, why do we keep funding exoskeletons when disabled people by the thousands die every year as a result of bed sores? Like, Jesus, do we need another damn exoskeleton? And why is money going to this? And people are like, oh, the averages and the ables are like, oh, look, it's an exoskeleton, so you can walk too. Yeah, but I'd rather not die of a bed sore. And so I just started building a list. And then when I was asked to apply for the job at Ford, the list became a bit more formal and turned into cool shit I want the Ford Foundation to fund at the back of a notebook. And in it, I'm very specifically laid out, like, we need a place doing work on immigration reform. We need to fund work supporting Native and Indigenous folks with disabilities. We need a disabled journalists organization. We need we need an organization of disabled doctors. Especially during this pandemic, and so much of the health reporting is just so crappy. So if we have good journalists and we have good doctors, like, that's a package deal. We can move something forward. And I need a disabled economist. I want to be able to break down the numbers so we can actually tell the real story around disability and poverty. And, like, if we're talking about reparations, have we thought about how reparations would impact disabled African Americans? No, we haven't. Well, how do we make sure they don't screw African American disabled folks? And can I get an economist to build out that work? Because I know we're really going to need it, but no one's doing it. And that's, like, the most fun part of the job, is sometimes just, like, sitting back and being like, okay, so if we get this, this, and this, like, what's the next thing? What would be really cool to do? Like, who? And also at the same time, being at a place like Ford, like, I joke all the time that when I was at the White House, everyone took my calls. No, like 90% of people took my calls. 100% of people take my calls when you give away money. And I was lucky that I had friends that worked in the foundation space that were like, enjoy it now, because when your time is up, nobody will answer your calls. They're like, so, like, use it. And so continually thinking of, like, what are the spaces we need to be in? And how can I use the privilege that I have in my role at the Ford Foundation to get our people into those spaces and make sure that they're supported in those spaces and that they can thrive in those spaces? Because it's not just getting in the door. Because, like, you can get in the door and then be surrounded by a room full of assholes. But how do we make sure it's the right door? How do we make sure whatever we're funding is set up to thrive? How do we make sure the people on the other end get it and are going to truly welcome and embrace and not just accept, but amplify and support disabled folks and disabled issues in that way?
Your kids are third generation now activists, and they're already, like,
persistent.
They're persistent, yes. Which
they're
is persistent. Great. Where do you hope to get the disability rights, civil rights space to hand off to them?
I want them to not have to choose whether they're Black or they're disabled. Like, I want them to be able to walk in a space, whether it be a disability majority space, African American majority space, and be welcomed and celebrated and supported for who they are, regardless of who their mother is, and what I had to do to lovingly encourage those organizations to stop being butt heads and let them in. I want them in those places and thriving, if they want to be. I want Kaya to be proud of the fact that Elizabeth Warren made her pinky promise to consider running for president one day, and that Elizabeth Warren called her to ask her about her presidential platform that she had me post on Twitter. And at the same time, I want, if Kaya wants to say, you know what, I want to be a teacher instead, or I want to be a mom. Like, I want those choices to be her choices and not choices she feels are imposed on her or limited by society. And I want Kendrick to feel okay for just being an average, I want good jobs for average kids. Like, light bulb turner is just not good enough. Like, person who hands down stuff to their mom from the top shelf of the grocery store. No, like he can go to college too. He can do real things.
What does the power of Passionista mean to you?
It's the power of the fight. It's the power of not giving up. It's the power of the possible, the thinking about in this moment, feeling not excited about the world, but still not losing hope. Like still having hope that we will get to a place where we can live our fullest lives, bring our whole selves unabashedly and proudly and excitedly to whatever table we go to. Or if we don't like a table, you know what? We pull out a chainsaw, we saw the damn thing down, set it on fire, and we have a campfire. And we set a campfire that we can all bring our whole selves to.
Thank you so much to all of this year's recipients and presenters. These women, all of our participants in this year's summit, and all of you watching are the people who are changing the world, and we are honored to have you as part of the Passionistas community. Have a great night, and we'll see you back here on the main stage tomorrow at noon Eastern, 11 Central, and 9 a.m. Pacific.